I know, I'm really going to say
You can go
something.
You can go ahead and start.
Are we good?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the Graphic Sex Project. I'm Jennifer Beman. In case you haven't sort of figured it out already, just in a nutshell, I'm giving people 1 centimeter cubes and asking them to think of a typical sexual encounter and breaking it down into its component parts and assigning each component a color and then making a graph temporally and proportionally of that sexual experience. Those are my basic instructions, and then people do whatever they want. My inspiration for this was an installation by the artist Jamie McCarthy called The Great Long Vaginas. He took a plaster cast of vulvas and made these panels of a series. He calls them Education Through Spectacle with the Goal of Freedom from Bodily Anxiety. By witnessing the range of genitalia, women come away with a greater acceptance of their own bodies, and I hope for the same reaction to my work, that you see the incredible range and diversity of what people do sexually, and can lead to more acceptance of what we all do. So my initial vision was that people would create essentially a timeline where things on the left happen before things on the right, and the quantity of color indicates the amount of time, so more color, more time. This one is super clear. It's really, I like the dots adding the addition of different moods. It's a nice touch. I'm developing this project to work on a few different levels. First, I think it's a tool of self-discovery, and the process of making a graph yourself can get you in touch with what you like to do sexually in a very approachable way. And then looking at other people's graphs can do the same thing, or can give you new ideas. And finally, as sorts of cultural information on what people do. The graphs, I think, can open up conversations with your partners about what you like and what you don't like in a very kind of non-threatening way of talking about it. It forces us to think about sex, I think, in a different way, using a different part of our brain than we usually do when we think about sex. You're thinking about it aesthetically, so that's a different part of your brain. You're putting names on things, that's a different part of your brain. You're thinking about it logically. So it sort of moves sex around a sort of tour of your brain, and that gives you a different perspective, I think. And then you can think about it like, then thinking about what you can do, what you do sexually is just sort of a matter of, what if I did red before the yellow? I have a website that has all the graphs so far. Right now there's about 250 of them. They're on the website just in a big pile. They're not organized. These are kind of organized by sort of roughly type of graph. I'm working on making this website interactive so that people will be able to do it online. I'm working with my friend Scott Gilson, who's helping me figure out how to make that, or he's not helping me, he's doing it.
It's a cooperative effort. She's the brains.
There's a lot of, we don't get a lot of opportunities to talk about sex and find out what other people do. We see movies, we see porn. None of these are particularly representative of what actually happens, what people are really doing. For instance, 18% of the most popular 50 videos, porn videos online have women actually climaxing. And just watching porn, you may get the idea that women don't, or that women climax from penis and vagina intercourse, when only really about 30% of women do. So these graphs give you an idea of what people do, in the order they happen, in the proportions they happen, and for how long. And you can see that really approachable in a pornographic way that just makes them fun. They look like toys. They're playful joyful. Some of them are not so joyful. So as I've been collecting the graphs, it's apparent that there's some complications in really understanding what people are saying in the graph, and then with a view towards eventually getting some data out of them that we could collect on the website. There's a wide range of how people interpret my basic instructions, which those are what I generally say, and then I get really different kind of things from those instructions. Many of them, it's hard to imagine how I could get really any data out of them in a consistent way, other than age and orientation. Some of them are more pictures than graphs. I mean, they're still great and charming in their own way. One of the pieces of data that I was thinking that I might be able to get out of the graphs is the amount of time people spend for heterosexual people in penis and vagina intercourse as a proportion of the entire sex act. And some of them, it's really easy to get that kind of data out of them. Like this one, for instance, it looks very proportional. Looks like the intended proportionality. You count the graphs, you divide the green by and this one is 16%. And here's one, this is 10%. That's 10% of the time that they're having sex, they're spending on penis and vagina intercourse, which I think is kind of interesting. This one, 6%. This one, 95%. 40% and 15%. So a lot of them, it's really apparent from looking at them that they intend proportionality and that you can get that kind of data out of them. But then problems of interpretation come up with a graph like this. Like, I don't know whether you count the nagging and the being guilty. And this one, those are concurrent layers, so you couldn't just count up all the blocks and divide because things are happening concurrently. And there's a lot of graphs where there's concurrent layers. So it would take, you could still maybe get some kind of data out of it like that, but it would take somebody looking at the graph and interpreting it. So like when we have a website, it wouldn't be an automatic kind of thing. This one, they called it a heat map, where more color means more intensity, which if they hadn't said that, I never would have guessed that that's what they meant. And then I see other ones like this, I wonder if they mean the same thing, if this is also a heat map. So it's just, there's some ambiguity. But still the level of detail about what people do and the activities people do is interesting details in and of itself. And when I have them on when they're interactive on a website, those keywords, what they do, the activities, would be metadata, data point that would be attached to each graph, so you could search by graphs and find, how many of them have cuddle time. A lot of people do these arcing timelines like this. It's I think it's a very common kind of metaphorical way for people to think about sex, with ramping up and a peak and then ramping down. So a lot of them, this is a really common graph, and they're also really simple to read because they're so much, it's on a line, and the proportionality is really clear. So when I do like a workshop, I usually show these kinds of graphs as examples to sort of lead people to that kind of clarity. And then a lot of people do the bar graphs, which are a little bit more ambiguous. And this one, usually with the bar graph, there's a y-axis and an x-axis, but this sort of seems like x and y are both time. And this one, they've labeled the x and y axis, but it doesn't really apply to the graph they did. They have different colors, so I don't know. Those are just some of the kind of problems that I run in as I'm looking at them and I'm trying to interpret them. Some people just go off on their own and do about their sex life in general, which are great. You know, I mean, I don't mind following my instructions. They're pretty interesting themselves. What was I going to say? So I gather these graphs in 3 different ways. I do workshops with, I've done workshops with just women where we do the graphs and then we get together and we talk about them. And then I'm also doing workshops with couples where the couples will do the graphs separately and then come together and talk about them, and then we have a guided discussion amongst couples. And if anyone is interested, I have some flyers right here for my next workshops, which are August 7th and September 9th are my next 2. So pick one of those up if you'd like to look into that. And those are just kind of, a couple of hours, thinking about your sex life, making a graph about your sex life, and then using that as a springboard for discussion with your partner. And then, there's just the fun of talking with a bunch of strangers about your sex life. It's kind of fun. I also take it to party atmospheres, which is sort of more like this, where there's a lot of people, and then there's the stuff to do your graph. So if you haven't noticed already, there's stuff you can do a graph here. You do it on a template, and you take a picture of it in the light box, and that's how it gets on the wall. So just what I'm planning on doing is we're working on a website. We have a website now, but it doesn't have any interactionality in this. So that's sort of the next step, is to have where you can do the graph on the website, and then that will hopefully, the internet will like it, and lots of people will do it. You'll be able to do a graph and then send it to someone. You'll be able to collect graphs that you particularly like and send those to people. And then the graph that you make will be added to the collection, and the metadata will be collected automatically. So age and geographic location, and the graphs will be sorted by all those gender, orientation, and keywords that you use. And then after a while of crunching all that data, I don't know how that happens, and then we'll have some cool graphs of visualization of the data that's come out there. I've started a spreadsheet that's to start sort of processing that data. And that's kind of the point where it's at right now. So thank you all for coming and looking at my stuff. Does anyone have any questions?
I actually have a question, because I love data visualization and the graphics and all of that, but I'm realizing because people are so creative and have different ideas about what should be noted, what the legends should be and all of that, have you thought about doing any text analysis of this?
Well, what I've done so far is just add a column on my spreadsheet of the keywords that they use for what they identify the blocks as.
Okay.
And then I at some point on the website, you'd be able to search for keywords. I don't know, like even just something as simple, as vaginal intercourse. Already, I have at least 20 different words people are using that some of them I know they mean that, some of them I think they mean that, some of them I mean that. So I don't know what to do about that, really. I don't know, is there, would there be some way of, automatically sort of guessing what words people might use to mean that and putting words into different categories, or would each freshly coined phrase be now one data point for someone who's doing that?
You could do some of that. You could do word clouds to see, what comes up the most often, which some of it may surprise you, and you may know already.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking, if you did text analysis, you could, like you're saying, do you would have to, it's some art to it, of course, so you would have to decide the categories. But
what is text analysis exactly?
Oh, well, it looks at often it looks at more free-form text or conversation, but it looks at what is coming up most often. Sometimes it looks at things that people tend to think of as positive versus negative, and there are just different ways you can do the text analysis too. I mean, I love the graphics and all that. It's just suddenly all the variation just jumps out at me as, wow, you could probably pull a lot from that kind of analysis too. It's just really, really cool. Of course, you already have your hands full.
That's exactly what I want to do, and that's where I want to take it.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but that you know, and I think that I think I'm already at a place where I could start doing that just by inputting the data manually, and then once the website is interactive, then a lot of that would happen. But would some of it have to have, you know, would have to pass through a person for interpretation? You know, I don't know.
Or some program that would kind of collect things that were similar.
Yeah.
You probably need to group some things because it's just too.
Yeah, I would think it'd be a combination. You would
Yeah.
have to have some people just looking at samples and deciding, yeah, you should probably group these 4 different comments into the
It
same
might be
area.
fun to look at which colors associate with which
That
things
too,
too.
yes,
So.
that's true. Yeah, anyway, that's cool stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, so as I understand it, the way you laid this out now, you basically said, here are some colors, go make something, right? And so that allows a lot of latitude for creativity.
Yeah.
Which is cool because you can say like, oh, I did it this way, but that person did it that way. I didn't even think of that.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, in terms of like analyzing, I hear you when you build an interactive website, many times that involves like imposing some sort of predetermined structure on that.
Yeah.
Like, and so it seems like there would be a balancing act there between like allowing for total latitude, which might lead to very little comparability, you know,
Yeah.
other than in a very sort of human, non-automated way.
Yeah.
And having it be very comparable, but less flexibility in terms of creativity. So I just wonder about your thoughts about that.
Well, the graphs are really charming the way they are, in that they're, you know, that everybody does it really differently, and the colors are really different, and some of them you're like, what does this mean? And so I like just the creativity, because I think bringing a sense of creativity and playfulness to our sex life is a worthy goal in itself. So I like that about it, but I want to balance that with figuring out ways to pull some data out of it as well, which more, you know, some of them I look at and say, well, that's just, you know, we can get data like keywords and age and orientation and those kinds of, but as far as interpreting the data, you know, it can't really be done because I don't know what they intended. So I don't think that I would want the website to be so restrictive that it wouldn't allow a lot of that sort of creativity and free form at the expense of some consistency in the data. So it could be that, like some of them, it is really clear what they intended. Like this, you know, this is super clear what they, this doesn't take a lot of interpretation, and you know, you can count blocks and you can get a proportionate amount of time that you're spending on the activities, and so it might be such that, you know, some graphs you look at and you say this one is good for this kind of data, and this one is not. And then I guess, I mean, maybe that takes a human being looking at them and making those judgments. Sort of a balance between the two. I realize that it's you know, like any kind of thing. If you know you give up something, you get something. And so you know, what you want to maximize the fun and the creativity and the joy, and also maximize the data. You know, but you know, and not give up too much of one to get the other.
Thank you for your project. It's really cool. What's been the most surprising thing for you, like, as you've been doing this? Or interesting, or
Yeah, you know, nothing really. People do a lot of things, and everybody's so different and varied, and I really appreciate the kind of joy that people bring to doing them, and people have been so many people have been so open with revealing to a total stranger. I had it at the Automatic for 6 weeks, and it was kind of a free running thing where it was just a room and you went in and kind of figured out what was going on. There was some signage, but nobody read that, and people took a picture. So one of the things that surprised me was that only about half the people that made a graph sent it to me. And I knew because I could see the templates were in the trash. I was like, oh, I didn't get that one, I didn't get that one. And I guess that surprised me, and then I realized that should not have surprised me, that people didn't want to tell something really intimate and personal about themselves and then sent it willy-nilly to a stranger. So that surprised me, and it shouldn't have, but any other questions? Thank you all for coming, and thank you. Really enjoyed talking about it. I love to talk about sex. So this is great that I get to stand up in front of a whole bunch of people and talk about sex. It's pretty awesome. And if anyone's interested in a workshop, please take a flyer too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.